and tested route of doing weddings, bar mitzvahs, 21st birthday parties, everything with a mobile DJ setup, you know, and belt drive turntables and stuff like that. And I started to get into, for some reason, I started to get into mixing because I wanted to blend the records together and not do as much talking, because what I found was people didn't want to hear you mouthing off like, hey, how you doing? I love you. Yeah, this is, I don't know, this is ABBA or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, people don't want to hear you talking. You only talk when there's something to say. So I wanted to blend these tracks together. And because it was on belt drive, Garrard belt drive turntables, I remember the actual make even, I had to compile a BPM book. So I used to, and this was before, you know, this was many years before I saw James Hamilton's column in Record Mirror 3 years ago, you know, which he always BPM records, and he was an absolute genius, the guy. Love James, good friend of mine, great guy. Rest in peace, mate. And I compiled this BPM book. So every single track that I bought from the record shop, I used to put my stopwatch on and BPM them all. And I ended up with a humongous BPM book with BPMs of loads and loads of tracks in there. You know, like for instance, 115 BPM, there was about 4 pages of just tunes, you know? And it was my Bible because it enabled me to mix on turntables that didn't have vari-speed, you know? So that was my initial thing, getting into the mixing. I also used to do the good old tried and tested route of doing my own little edits on a cassette tape player at home. Yeah. And I was doing all these real fast bullet edits and things with the cassette pause button, you know, recording stuff and re-editing stuff. And it was just that bug. It's like a drug. It's like when it grabs you, and you're there, you know? So it's like a drug for me. And it was creative. I mean, I was always a musician. I learned piano when I was younger, so I was a musician anyway. And it was just an extension of that. It was like, I want to just create some stuff, you know? As well as play what I think are great tunes to, you know, an appreciating crowd, you know? And so it all started with that, really. And then, because I was heavily into the mixing, like sagging records together and mixing records together and doing the edit mixes on the cassette tape, it naturally kind of transformed itself into me following some of the early electro and stuff like that, you know. It was just, it was all about the beats, it was all about the groove, it was all about the vibe, and I just hooked right into that, and it was the most exciting music at the time. I mean, that was it, you know. I love all music. I mean, my collection at home is humongous, and it goes from, you know, it goes from reggae to jazz to orchestral to, I mean, everything, you know. So I was always just a music junkie. For me, music's good or bad, that's it. That's the only genres for me, you know. And it just had this passion and this vibe, and it was so vibrant, and also, you know, especially the electro stuff, really futuristic sounding, you know. I mean, I remember first time I heard Planet Rock, Africa Bambaataa, was at an all-dayer. I used to be a big dancer, you know. Yeah. So for me, that's where I draw a lot of my inspiration as a DJ, is through the fact that I used to be a dancer, and I used to go to clubs and I used to dance all night, all day, all night. I didn't have much money, so I used to go in the toilet and drink water out of the tap and then carry on dancing just all night, dancing my head off like a maniac, you know. And I was into all the scenes. Originally I was into Northern Soul, and then it moved on to kind of funk and soul, and then the jazz funk scene, and then things like electro came along, and then, you know, house music when I used to play at the Hacienda, and you know, for me it's all the same thing. For me, I find it hard. I find it hard separating, should we say,
pigeonholing stuff.
Yeah, pigeonholing like old school electro stuff, and separating that from, you know, some of the initial retro, proto house stuff and whatever. It was very electronic. A lot of this stuff was very electronic as well, I found. Yeah. You know, from the early 80s, well, late 70s, early 80s, we started to hear synthesizers and kind of drum machines, and it really was music from another planet, you know. Like I said, I first heard Planet Rock by Africa Bambaataa I remember being at an all-dayer in somewhere like Blackpool or whatever, and Colin Curtis, who's a legendary name on the jazz funk scene, the jazz scene, and then he influenced the early electro scene by playing records like this. He played Planet Rock at this old air, and it just was totally out there.
Yeah.
The sound of it was like cold and kind of tight and beaty and computerized and synthetic, and oh man, it was like, it really was like music from another planet. Like I remember listening to I Feel Love, Giorgio Moroder's production of Donna Summer. That was just, still today, that's one of my favourite records of all time. And it's just, I'll still listen to it now and I'm like, that just sounds incredible.
Well, yeah, I mean,
compared to stuff
even
today,
that, you know,
it's just,
say Donna Summer is pretty much considered maybe one of the kind of first house tracks, if you like.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And those things kind of set the ground, if you like, set the foundations for a lot of the later house stuff and whatever, you know. And as I said, I mean, quite a lot of the gigs that I do, I play quite eclectically. I play kind of all over the place. And the reason for that is because, like I said, I find it hard pigeonholing things into genres. It's like, oh, I love this, and I love that, and I love that. And if it all goes together, great, you know?
Yeah.
Being stuck in one genre quite often really I get bored really quickly, so I'm kind of veering off a bit. But for me, early hip-hop, that was the vibe. You were picking out inspirations from old rock tunes and a little break in this, a little break in that, you know, and you were just finding the funkiest bits of the tunes, you know, and working with that and then creating something new, you know, like in a cut and paste type of way, like with art, you know, with visual art, with artwork and art in galleries, you know. There's a lot of stuff that happened like with what's his name? The guy who used to do kind of collage type art. Andy Warhol, you know. Yeah. A lot of that stuff, for me, that's hip hop in a way. It's like it's taking kind of images, taking images of people and warping them a bit and putting them out in his own way, you know. So there's a lot of connections for me with a lot of stuff like that, you know. And it was very much about creativity. The early hip-hop scene was just about creativity, having fun, creativity, and having fun. Okay. And it was, you know, the breakdancing thing, which still today, I see amazing breakdancers on the floor, and still my mouth's open. I'm like, wow, how the hell do those guys do that? It's just, what? So there was the breakdancing, the graffiti, the MCing, the DJing, and the look, and the clothing, and it was all just a real uplifting kind of vibe, you know, which I just really hooked into. That, for me, that was just great, you know.
So what kind of made you decide to go into more of the scratching aspect as opposed to being more like you've said, like a kind of club DJ, just being happy and content to play the tunes but mixing them as such?
Well, I wasn't ever happy and content at just doing that.
No, but you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Obviously, like, you know, you've got your legends, like, you know, like your Froggies and you know, I can't name them off the top of it, but they were kind of happy just to play soul and funk and kind of mix it in and take influences. But so I mean, what kind of?
Well, I wanted to mix it up a little bit. I mean, I remember, you know, I started off cutting little vocal bits in, and that was just, you know, the forward movement, if you like, of a basic baby scratch. It's just cutting something in, ha, and then bringing it back with the volume down, and then going ha again, you know, in a very basic sense. And you know, the very basic scratch would be letting something go and then pulling it back and leaving the volume fader up. So ha, 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 ha. So you'd start getting that. So I started doing little bits like this in the clubs I was playing in, and you know, I just thought it was just an interesting sound, you know.
Okay.
It was just an interesting sound, and then I became good friends with Greg Wilson originally in the beginning, because I took over from a couple of his big gigs in the north, Wigan Pier and Legends in Manchester, and also I kind of followed him playing at the Hacienda as well. And Greg, I mean, we were really good friends at one point, still are, you know, we were really good friends at one point. I used to look after his house when he was away and this, that and the other. He used to live in Wigan up north, and he had this amazing Matamp mixer, which had a crossfader, and that's the first time I'd ever seen a crossfader, and I was just transfixed. I was amazed. This mixer built in America. I think actually Froggy, who you mentioned before, I think he designed it.
Okay.
And it was an amazing mixer for the time. And so I used to say to Greg, can I just go up there and do a bit of practicing? He was like, yeah, fine. So I'd be practicing around on this Matamp mixer, and doing little mixes and little edits. And then Greg, I think it was Greg actually who taught me how to tape edit on tape as well. So I learned how to tape edit with razor blades and tape, sticky tape, sticking the tape together and splicing it up. And I really got into that because it was another creative thing. I mean, I'm all about creation, and it was creative. So I started to get into that as well, and took it.
So was that more for your pleasure or for the listener's pleasure?
Kind of both. I mean, people at the time, you probably remember this, but at the time, people used to like mixes which had these little bullet edits and things. It was kind of vibey.
Yeah. It
was kind of energetic and gave across a good vibe. And I was really into that as well. So I was like, oh, I'll do a few of those and start practicing that. And so I got into that. And then, as I said, using Greg's mixer, I'd be up there, and it was in a spare bedroom in his house and his setup, And I was playing around doing little scratches and stuff, and Greg at the time was also getting into scratching, And so I'm constantly, I'm forever indebted to Greg in a way, because it was like the first person I'd met who was into the same kind of stuff as me. And for years before that, I was kind of, I'm a bit of a loner anyway, but I was kind of at home on my own in my bedroom, kind of getting into all this stuff. And being really kind of, I'm a bit, I've realised later in life that I'm a little bit, what is it you call it? A little bit,
eccentric?
Sort of.
Introvert?
Kind of. When you've got, people call it, what is it? Some kids you meet and they're a bit special. Special. That people say he's a bit special.
Artistic.
Yeah, kind of all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Definitely, because I've kind of had a bit of that within me. I think because I've looked back at my life and I've noticed that I've followed a lot of the traits of autism and stuff like that. Like kind of getting really deep into things and collecting loads of stuff and da. I do it now, and man, it drives me crazy because after collecting hundreds and thousands of records, now because we're in the digital age, I collect millions and millions and millions of digital files that I'm members of certain groups on Facebook or whatever, and I'm a member of a great group that's just the best group I've ever been invited to join. It's a group of loads of legendary American DJs and producers and remixers, and names that I would never have believed that I could actually talk to. In the past. Whoa, wow. And they put up loads of stuff that they've ripped from vinyl, really good quality copies of stuff, and I'm constantly downloading this stuff all the time. And if I spend a day away from the internet, I'm like, oh, I wonder what stuff's come up on the group, and I need to just collect for some. Oh, total addiction. Badly. Beyond badly. It's just insane, So a lot of those things, I've been looking back at my life and thinking, actually, my mind's always been going this kind of weird way, which in a way, I do a lot of lecturing now and I teach music production, and I've had, I've had students who've kind of got that. I don't like calling it. People say, it's a different way of thinking, and some people say it's things like that are an affliction and whatever, but absolutely not. The students that I've taught that have, who are that way inclined, are the most fascinating kind of inspirational, really creatively thinking students. They're very good at locking in on something, and then taking it to the next level, which I think I've done a little bit in the past with certain things,
Okay. So going back to kind of the scratching thing, obviously most people know you as a DMC mix champion.
Yeah.
How did you get into the DMC thing? Did someone say to you go and have a go, or was someone invite you? Or
well, I just saw it advertised, I think, and I was like, oh wow, other people are doing this shit, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh wow, I've got to enter this just for a laugh, and you know, just to get into it and maybe meet other people who are doing it, you know?
Okay.
So that's basically how it happened for me, you know? So I just entered it and got through the heats and whatever, got into the UK final first year, and
what kind of age was you then at this?
I was about 22 at the time.
Yeah.
And it was just my life at the time. That was what I lived for.
Yeah.
You know? And it was, like I say, it's a very creative, expression-led thing. You know, for me, you know, doing all that kind of turntablism DJ type stuff, which I'm quite rusty at nowadays, but doing all that is just for me another extension of being a musician.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, nowadays, luckily, turntablists are kind of seen as musicians by people like the Musicians Union and stuff like that, you know,
Yeah.
which I always thought that in the past, but there was a long period where Musicians Union just didn't take any notice of any kind of DJ whatsoever. It was like, no.
A few years back I saw DJ Crush, and what he did with a turntable was absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. Like you say, he used that turntable as an instrument.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not as a, well, yeah,
as a record player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was doing this and doing that, and